This bill to go through its remaining stages at the sitting. 49.
Senators, the question is that the Standing Order 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I beg to move for second reading, a bill shortly entitled Customs Control and Management Amendment. Madam President, this bill, or this amendment, is related to the Customs and Management Control bill. And we would have noted that St. Lucia had ratified the WTO, World Trade Organization, agreement, the TFA, in 2015, as far back as 2015, and it officially entered into force on Independence Day, February 22nd, 2017. Following the ratification, Madam President, by 2/3 of the WTO membership, the TFA is a binding mutual trade agreement among the members of the World Trade Organization, which is designed to address burdensome border requirements and to ultimately make it easier and more cost-effective for trade and trader participation in international trade. Madam President, the advance rulings is a requirement under the Article 3 of the TFA, which requires members to issue advance rulings on the tariff, classification, and the origin of goods. Article 3 of the TFA defines advance ruling as a written decision provided by the member, typically the Customs and Administration, to the applicant prior to the importation or exportation of a good covered by the application. And that sets forth the treatment that the member, in that case the Customs, shall provide a good that at the time of importation with regard to, 1, in the tariff classification, and number 2, in the origin of the good. Madam President, simply put, an advance ruling is a written binding determination by Customs to an applicant on matters such as the tariff classification and origin of goods. The advance ruling is only applicable to custom areas which directly affect tax liability. Madam President, the Customs Control Management Bill, this bill, and Customs Advance Ruling Regulations will cover 2 customs areas tariffs. 1 is classification, and the other the origin of goods. Madam President, there are some benefits that can be used to justify this amendment, and one of them is that one of these benefits is the predictability and legal certainty. Traders in that regard can anticipate duty liabilities and regulatory requirements before importation or exportation. A second benefit, Madam President, is that the advance rulings will foster trust between the Customs and the traders, since the rulings provide for more consistent treatment of customs transactions. And so this in turn, Madam President, encourages compliance by traders. Advance rulings, they allow Customs to monitor and improve compliance through risk assessment, and Customs can focus on monitoring goods in which decisions on treatment have not yet been made. Another benefit, Madam President, is that the advance rulings foster greater participation of small and medium-sized enterprises in international trade. And so small and medium-sized enterprises often lack the treatment and expertise that the larger companies have, and in determining issues like classification and origin. Advanced rulings can therefore provide these determinations. An additional benefit, Madam President, is the issue of dispute reduction. And it says that there will be fewer appeals and post-clearance disputes regarding classification and origin of goods through this amendment. It is also anticipated that there's another benefit, and that is the alignment with international standards, which I think is critical for us. And this positions St. Lucia as a current, transparent, and facilitative customs administration. So currently, Madam President, St. Lucia does not provide for an advanced ruling regime, and therefore the Customs Control and Management Act, Cap 1505, of the revised laws of St. Lucia must be amended to require the Controller of Customs to determine the issuance of binding advanced rulings upon request. And so, Madam President, the basis, therefore, for that has just been explained here for the amendment to be made to the Customs Control and Management Bill. Thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the Customs Control and Management Amendment Bill be read a second time. Senator Fede.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a brief comment on the amendment as presented by the Leader of Government Business on the trade agreement on facilitation, a multilateral agreement signed among the member countries of the World Trade Organization. Madam President, the opposition would like to see policies engendered by the government to ensure that this undertaking is mutually beneficial. So it is all well and good for us to sign agreements such as this one to ensure that other signatories to the global agreement can access our markets with as much ease as possible. But, Madam President, we need to use this opportunity as well to boost exports as a means of driving economic growth and prosperity and creating opportunities for our people. Madam President, as we look at our trade deficit, we would see that it's over $1 billion in the Economic and Social Review. And so, Madam President, this really tells us how badly we've been doing as a country as it pertains to being a stronger export. I know that the issues are many: smallness of size, lack of indigenous markets, high inputs for production and manufacturing, and so on. But, Madam President, every time I see these agreements and us having to sign on to these international agreements, it makes me feel that we need to ensure that there is a mutually beneficial trading agreement. Madam President, the Leader of Government Business outlined that this is going to be beneficial to small and medium-sized enterprises as one of the benefits outlined. And I would like to say, Madam President, that I think that this is a tall order in the small and medium-sized businesses accessing international markets, given all the encumbrances and given all the bottlenecks and the roadblocks that stand in the way. We need to beef up the capacity. Of course, the Leader of Government Business can say that, yes, we've done well in the exportation of CMOS and other sectors, but those are very, very small volumes that our small and medium-sized businesses are able to tap when it comes to the international market. So we really need to make sure that the export strategy is refined so that it can better allow exports to happen. Madam President, the reduction of disputes is also another area pointed out by the Leader of Government Business. And yes, the opposition agrees that that is going to help significantly in creating the certainty that businesses need when trading across borders. The alignment with international standards, while this may help customs administration, but it must benefit ultimately trade exports. This is the ultimate plan. So it does not escape us from making sure, and I use the word us in this case, meaning St. Lucia the country and not the St. Lucia Labour Party. It is crucial, Madam President, that we ensure that this does not only help customs administration, but it must also benefit exports ultimately. I thank you very much.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank the member for his brief intervention. I just want to note that with regard to investment and trade, I think the benefit here for this bill incorporated with what the government is actually doing with the incentivizing of the small and micro enterprises, putting $10 million into the SMME, for example, is a step in that direction. And it's not only putting money for people to start businesses, but in that case, there's a training component which brings the small business owners in line with some of those standards that are spoken to in this bill. And as well, there's also an incentive for adding value added, to be able to raise the standards that we have in producing and manufacturing and delivering those services and those goods, so that it can improve our capacity, particularly for export. So I think his comments are noted, but I just wanted to add that these are steps that we have already taken to help improve our capacity in that regard. I thank him, and I look forward to the passage of the amendments.
Senators, the question is that the Customs Control and Management Amendment Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Customs Control and Management Act, Cap 15.05.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Amendment of Section 2.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Insertion of new Part 4A.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Amendment of Section 141.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the Customs Control and Management Amendment Bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the Customs Control and Management Amendment Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Customs Control and Management Amendment Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Electricity.
Electricity.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move that this bill be presented for second reading at the next or subsequent sitting of the Senate.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Exercising now. Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government and the Republic of Serbia and the Government of St. Lucia on visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic and official passports.
Agreement between the Government of the Republic of Serbia and the Government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passport.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill is proposing to allow for an agreement between the two governments, St. Lucia and Serbia, to have exemptions of holders of diplomatic and official passports. Madam President, the basic context is that our country has seen need to explore options in terms of our diplomatic allies, South-South cooperation, and looking beyond the existing ones for different reasons, Serbia being one of them. And Madam President, Serbia represents an important partner for St. Lucia in the field of development cooperation with tangible benefits already being realized. Notably, several St. Lucian students, Madam President, are currently studying in Serbia under the World in Serbia Scholarship Program, which provides fully funded opportunities for tertiary education. And so we see an opportunity there for continued collaboration in that regard. And it not only supports the St. Lucian human resource development agenda, but also strengthens our long-term educational and cultural linkages. Beyond the scholarships, Madam President, Serbia has a rich tradition in the performing arts, and that's an area that we have put strong focus as an area within the ministry with which I serve. Film production, sports, and areas that complement St. Lucia's own creative economy and strategy that offers avenues for cultural exchange and capacity building, technical cooperation, and other areas of potential, as Serbia has a very developed and strong expertise in the area, another area which is ICT, as well as civil aviation, governance reform, and all of these are areas that we believe will help to strengthen us and strengthen our own capacity in our various institutions. The visa waiver agreement, Madam President, therefore facilitates smoother mobility for our students, our officials, and cultural envoys, which we may be moving between the countries, while it also encourages the Serbian participation in regional events hosted in the Caribbean. Importantly, Madam President, building closer ties with Serbia also enhances St. Lucia's visibility within Europe and creating new channels for cooperation and investment, and even reciprocal support in multilateral settings. By leveraging this agreement, Madam President, St. Lucia can consolidate its existing educational ties and broaden cooperation into culture, sports, ICT, like I mentioned, and public administration. And all of these areas, Madam President, we believe are areas that are directly aligned with our national development priorities. And Madam President, with that in mind, I think it really merits the need for us to make those waivers, implement those waivers to facilitate this type of exchange. And so I put this to the Senate for its approval.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a second time. Senator Fede.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to make a brief intervention on this bill, Madam President. I am going to say that while I respect the sovereignty of St. Lucia and its freedom to deepen diplomatic cooperation with any friendly government, and while I agree that as a small island developing state with all of its vulnerabilities, that we should expand our diplomatic relations as much as we can. But I'm going to caution to say that we have to be very measured in how we do so, Madam President. A few concerns about Serbia, and that is Serbia's application for EU membership on December 2009, of which the European Union have failed to grant accession to. The progress, Madam President, have been very, very slow, as there have been a few political hurdles that the European Union have made very public. One being Serbia's support for Russia in the ongoing Ukraine war. So, Madam President, it then begs the question that if you've got a country, as was the case with Russia, that is supporting the Russian Federation against Ukraine, against the tide of our traditional Western friends, i.e. the EU as well as the United States, does it then make very good sense for us to open our arms with a very wide embrace to such countries? I raise this issue, Madam President, because the geopolitical situation in the world is extremely sensitive. And I raise this issue following a concern by us in the opposition when the government had failed to accede to banning applications in our CIP program from the Russian and Belarusian states, when Grenada had banned applications, when St. Kitts and Dominica and all those countries, St. Lucia became the fifth and last OECS CIP jurisdiction to have banned applications from the Russian Federation. What I'm trying to say is that when these initiatives happen, you send the wrong signal to some of your closest friends. And as we expand, we must be mindful of whether, in fact, we are endangering relationships that are well cultivated and that are delivering significant cultural, economic, and other benefits to the development of our country. And so I heard a member, I was a bit confused about the South-South cooperation in the explanation, because to me, Serbia, if I'm not mistaken, is somewhere in the north of the equator. But what I would want to say, though, Madam President, is that I would be very, very careful in the signal that this would send to our international friends, notwithstanding the fact that it is our sovereign right to extend visa waivers to whichever country we want to extend visa waivers to. But we must be mindful at the same time that when we do so, what are the possible ramifications? And I say so not without any evidence. Madam President, you would recall that there is a leaked travel ban or list of countries that the United States, with our biggest tourism market, our biggest diaspora, our biggest trading partner, and all of those economic links. And that leaked memo from the State Department suggested that St. Lucia could have been on a list of countries for severe penalties. We note that with specificity and factually, the United States Embassy in Barbados has actually removed certain privileges that we enjoy already, and those privileges where children under 13 and individuals over the age of 70, elderly and children, did not have to go to Barbados to do face-to-face interviews, but now they have to. So while in the case of Grenada, it remains intact, but for St. Lucian citizens, we now have to do face-to-face interviews if we are below the age of 13, and before we didn't have to. And for individuals who are considered elderly above the age of 79, did not have to go to Barbados. So all of this extra cost is coming in. And then to compound that situation, and I hope never to God this happens, there is the issue of a 15,000 US bond, which two countries have already had to pay. And I hope that we never ever have to be on a list of countries that are considered for that action of having to pay 15,000 US for going to the United States as a bond in the event that we decide to stay in the United States. So, Madam President, the geopolitical situation is very sensitive, and whether we want to accept it or not, these are not normal times. And so one has to be very, very careful in the steps that they make. Now, if Serbia is supporting the Russian Federation in the Ukraine war, a position that St. Lucia, by a couple of years ago, suspending all CIP applications from Russia. That's what we did. We did so because we wanted to stand in solidarity with a war that was led by the United States and its Western allies. We said we stand in solidarity, and we are making a statement against what Russia is doing to the Ukrainians. So if we took that position, on one hand in our foreign policy, in the applications of to our CIP program, why then do we then take this position, which signals to all of the world that we are now in wide embrace to a country that does not support the position that we have taken publicly on the Russian-Ukraine war? So I want to submit this caution to the House, and want to say that this is a very intriguing move by the St. Lucia Labour Party administration. Madam President, I thank you.
Senator Goddard.
Madam President, it never ceases to amaze me as to how Senator Dominic Fede can, in the same breath, speak about our sovereignty and our right to choose our friends, and in that same breath caution us because some of our friends are in a spat rightly or wrongly, with the person or the country with whom we seek not to establish relations, but to broaden relations. I am not aware that we are the enemies or the antagonists of anybody, whether it be in the Ukraine-Russian war or any other thing like that. Different countries have taken their different positions, which is their right to do. People have explanations for why that war has erupted. People see it from different angles. South Africa sees it. Most of the African continent sees it in one way. Brazil sees it in another way. The US and Western Europe sees it in another way. Are we going to allow ourselves to be dictated by that? People take their sides. They take their sides in conflicts like this. And are we going to allow ourselves to be dictated to? Fall into that same colonial morass and allow ourselves to be dictated to simply because the United States and Europe and whoever else have their spat with Russia? And we do not want to appear, and we do not want to be, Serbia is Russia's friend, so we do not want to be to appear to be Serbia's friend because, come on, let us stop that nonsense. You know, let us stand up and exercise our sovereignty. Had we taken this position, up to today we would be treating Cuba as a pariah. Cuba is definitely regarded as an enemy by certain of our friends. Are we to regard Cuba as an enemy? Venezuela is regarded as an enemy by certain of our friends. Are we to regard Venezuela as an enemy because of that? Serbia, with whom we have diplomatic relations, and we are looking to broaden diplomatic relations. And I hear from the leader of government business that we have students studying in Serbia. Are we now going to shun the broadening of our ties with Serbia because we might step on the toes of certain of our friends? When will we grow up? There will always be positions that we take that might not please some of our friends. Let them tell us that. But we are a sovereign country, Senator Fede. We are a sovereign country. And let us stop this nonsense. Thank you.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Very interesting comments by the opposition. Correctly so, we are supposed to respect every country's independence to choose their friends, and so do they with regard to us. We are correctly living in a world of sensitive geopolitical situations, and I must tell Senator Fede, I know where he was trying to go. You can't stop saying anything if they don't say CIP. But while he's saying that certain countries are not engaging in CIP with Russia, I'm sure he knows that some of those same friends, big fish, are actually still engaging Russia. Madam President, they are still engaging Russia in the same process. So I'm not saying we do what we see everybody does, but we have a certain right and a certain level of independence to be able to make these judgment calls. But there's a very important observation I made, Madam President, and that's the only thing I'll comment on beyond this. Senator Fede seems to be saying to us that in light of the sensitive geopolitical situation, we should be very careful and be mindful of our actions. But it is the same Senator Fede's party, his opposition, his team, and others who have ganged up. You know, when we are broadening our diplomatic relations in a very diplomatic way, in a very responsible way, be cautious. You know, you must be careful who you get involved with, who you align yourself with. But that opposition just very recently was well aligned with certain known elements with serious criminal backgrounds who are associated with all kinds of things, making all kinds of allegations about us and our CIP program, and who went to look at evidence, and who team up with who, and who wants to take us to court, and who withdrew the court case, and all of that. At that time, where was the opposition's awareness and sensitivity to the actions out there that can have implications for us as a small island state? Did they even think about the implications of these actions in the geopolitical world? What consequence it would have for our country? There you are, teaming up with people who have no interest in the development of St. Lucia, who have their own beef and their own axe to grind with other people. And then you come here talking about, we have to be so very careful.
Senator Fede.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. The member is misleading the House. I stand in the point of order. To suggest that we were teaming up with anybody, that is absolutely untrue. We were invited to Washington like the government was as an opposition. We were curious. We wanted to see whether the evidence that contained in the deposition of the case, the RICO case, and we went to see for ourselves whether the evidence is true. But we weren't teaming up with anybody. That's a totally different argument.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I will not be lured into this. I've said what I said. We were invited to Washington by who? The American government. And it's a good thing. You see, we are a sovereign state. People don't just invite us to Washington and we jump on a plane and go and talk to people who have been to jail in 2 different continents. We're not going to do that. You're inviting us to Washington. Kimunuye pour éviter le gouvernement cette ici Washington. Kimunuye. So we did not go. The opposition chose to go and engage individuals who had their ulterior motives. We did not. And that's why I said that was very irresponsible. That is why this government did not engage them. And threats were made, and we're going to be taken to court and so on, and how many millions, and then they dropped the charges. That was not the government of any country. That was not any decent sovereign state that was doing that. But Madam President, we all know how that turned out.
Senator Fede.
Madam President, I rise in the point of order. Yeah, the member is misleading the House again in outlining the events of the RICO case and how it was removed from the courts. Madam President, the government filed for diplomatic immunity.
Senator, Honorable, excuse me, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I never stood in this House and mentioned any particular case. Senator Fede is the one who named the case. As he did earlier today, he seems to have a lot of evidence about a lot of things. Very unscrupulous and very shady stuff. So I never mentioned any name or any case. I just give reference to his opposition getting involved and having all kinds of alliances and associations with people who have gone to jail in more than one continent. That's all I said. So would a cap fits, let them wear it. I am saying that when this government is expanding its relations with a sovereign state, not an individual, a sovereign state, and you're cautioning the government, be careful who you align with. The international community is looking. You know, there's serious geopolitical consequence. You didn't think of the geopolitical consequences when your opposition was traveling to Washington to engage people. But thankfully, our government knew better, and we did not engage, and now we're moving on. Madam President, I want to again reiterate that as a sovereign state, we will be guarded and cautious and diplomatic in our relations with foreign governments and friends. We will be ever so responsible when we make those decisions, but we reserve the right to choose who we associate with. And if Senator Fede wants to have that right, he has to win the next election, get into government, and they'll make those decisions. In the meantime, he will allow the government that has been duly elected to serve the people of this country to make that judgment call as they see fit. I thank you, Madam President.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to give effect to and provide for the implementation of the agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Force of law.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Period of stay.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Condition of stay.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Suspension of agreement.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 7.
Amendment of schedule.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 8.
Regulations.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Schedule.
Agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports.
Schedule stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the agreement between the government of the Republic of Serbia and the government of St. Lucia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports, Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports.
Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic and official passports.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through the remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic and official passports. Madam President, St. Lucia established diplomatic relations with the Republic of Indonesia back in 1994. Admittedly, throughout the years, these relations between the two countries have been relatively dormant. However, in 2023, a proactive stride was made to enhance international cooperation and collaboration with the Asian region, inclusive of the Republic of Indonesia. And this pivotal aspect of discussions between the Foreign Affairs Ministry and of the Republic of Indonesia and the St. Lucian delegation, led by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister of External Affairs, was the agreement. In this agreement, there was an agreement to waive the visa requirements for diplomatic and official holders. And of course, this agreement has successfully solidified the growing relationship between these two nations. So in light of that, Madam President, we wish to ask for this proposed agreement to be passed in this honorable chamber.
Senators, the question is that agreement between Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a second time. Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled. No, we have to. Apologies, Madam. We have to go through committee stage.
Yes. Senators, the question is that the agreement between Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to give effect to and provide for the implementation of agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports and for related matters.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Application.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Force of law.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Period of stay.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Condition of stay.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Suspension or renewal of agreement.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 8.
Amendment of schedule.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Clause 9.
Regulations.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Schedule.
Agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary passports.
Schedule stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as have that opinion say aye. As many as have a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that agreement between Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic and official passports bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic and official passports bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as have that opinion say aye. As many as have a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of Indonesia on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic or official passports, Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between Government of St. Lucia and Government of Georgia on visa exemption and visa exemption or for holders of ordinary and diplomatic, official and service passports.
Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official and service passports.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I beg for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at the sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as have that opinion say aye. As many as have a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemptions for the holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official and service passports. Madam President, like the other two countries, St. Lucia has reason for coming to the Senate with this particular bill. Georgia presents meaningful opportunities for St. Lucian's development cooperation agenda. And that is particularly in the areas where that country, Georgia, has established itself as a leader in reform. Over the past 2 decades, Madam President, Georgia has transformed its governance systems, consisting of ranking very highly in the global indices for ease of doing business, anti-corruption efforts, digital government services, and these experiences are valuable models that could be adapted to strengthen our own country's own public administration, our e-governance, and the investment facilitation framework. Madam President, also, Georgia has successfully branded itself very well as a Four Seasons destination, so that augurs well for our tourism industry because it has been able to attract growing numbers of investors through a very innovative market in the industry and has formed very strong links with very well-to-do and influential partners. And so, Madam President, this serves as a very good background upon which we would like to strengthen those, to make these exemptions to facilitate the aforementioned. So I present that to the Chamber for its approval. Thank you.
Senators, the question is that agreement between the government of St. Lucia and government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports bill be read a second time. Senator Paulius.
Can I have her, please? Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I have been patient. I have listened. And I just rise, Madam President, to make a brief submission on the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports. Madam President, as we are all aware, and it has been articulated not just in this chamber today, but in the lower house, that there are obvious benefits to be derived from bilateral visa exemption agreements. Whether it is with Georgia, India, Indonesia, and so on, or any state for that matter, these agreements, Madam President, can make travel a lot more efficient. It can reduce unnecessary delays and create opportunities, as we have all heard, for closer cooperation in areas of mutual interest. And we recognize that. On the surface, Madam President, this is commendable. And I have absolutely no doubt that when the United Workers' Party gets back to office, we will see many more of these visa waiver agreements. But I'm not sure what the leader of government business was alluding to when he made some allegations prior or during his rebuttal. But I can say to you at this point, Madam President, that whatever we are going to pursue will be done with prudence and caution. And Madam President, I wanted to pin the point of exercising prudence and caution because here we are today being asked to give our concurrence to the signing of a visa exemption with a country that at this point is a bit questionable in the eyes of the international community and the European Union. So while the benefits are clear, Madam President, we must not ignore some of the risks or the wider international context in which this agreement is being signed. And I heard Senator Goddard during his intervention, but we must not be too myopic, Madam President, about our diplomatic relations with other countries. We need to be cautious when there is evidence to suggest that. Do we in St. Lucia operate in a vacuum? We don't. We are a small island developing state, and we don't operate in a vacuum. Are we really self-sufficient? Madam President, I just want to bring to the sitting here today that in a press release issued on 27th January this year by the Council of the European Union, it was reported, Madam President, that the European Union suspended visa privileges for Georgian diplomats and officials. Of course, ordinary Georgian citizens were unaffected. And I have no qualms with this one. But that suspension, Madam President, didn't happen by accident. It didn't. It was based, Madam President, on serious concerns about governance and the rule of law in Georgia. And so, Madam President, here lies the contradiction. If the European Union, arguably the strongest and most powerful political and economic union globally, has taken this drastic step to tighten controls with regard to diplomatic relations with Georgia. We're looking at the holders of diplomatic passports. We must ask ourselves, Madam President, why should St. Lucia go in the opposite direction at this moment? Why are we opening the doors wider? Madam President, are we not in danger of looking reckless and out of step or out of alignment with our most important partners?
That's right.
We only want to ensure that when we do what we do, Madam President, that we do this judiciously and we do it carefully. Madam President, if our credibility is weakened, what does it mean for our ability to negotiate and cooperate on the international stage? Madam President, these are some of the questions that we need to ponder on as we affix our signatures to those agreements. Now, Madam President, I want to acknowledge that Article 7 of this agreement contains a snapback clause, which of course allows both parties to suspend the agreement for reasons of security, public order, or health protection. And that is a useful safeguard, Madam President, and it's not new. It's not uncommon for these clauses to appear in those kinds of agreements. Madam President, the European Union itself includes such suspension clauses in its visa waiver agreements with countries like Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda. And we have seen that the EU itself utilizes these clauses in 2022 and 2023 to suspend its visa exemption agreements with the Republic of Vanuatu, a small island located in the South Pacific.
That's right.
Madam President, and in December of last year, to revoke it altogether because of security risks tied to that country's golden passport scheme. Does that ring a bell to us? So yes, the mechanism exists. It does. But Madam President, the issue here today is not whether we can slam on the brake after the fact, you know. The real issue is whether it is the right time to board the train.
That's right.
Why now? In light of the international developments, Madam President. So in closing, Madam President, we need to ensure that our foreign policy and what it means goes beyond just the paperwork. It is about how St. Lucia positions itself in the eyes of the world. And so to move forward and grant visa exemptions to holders of diplomatic and official service passports to Georgians at this time, Madam President, on this side of the House, Madam President, we believe that we are risking, or we are taking a big risk actually, and we are making ourselves appear a little bit indifferent to the same governance issues, Madam President, that the European Union has alarmed. This might very well weaken our credibility. It might damage our reputation, and it may cost us in future cooperation. Madam President, this visa exemption agreement has merit, and we don't want the members opposite to misconstrue what we're saying. There are benefits to be derived, but we only want to say that with merit, without timing and the prudence, this agreement can be counterproductive and it can be dangerous. Thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Leader of Senator Fading.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, the leader of government business stood a short time ago and told us that in this bill, the following categories of passport holders from the state of Georgia will be waived based on this agreement: diplomatic, official, ordinary, and service passports. Madam President, this then presents an even greater security and immigration challenge to our country. I sincerely hope that we have done the requisite due diligence and the studies to ensure that we have the capacity for any resultant increase in immigrants from this part of the world. Madam President, the leader of government business also told us that Georgia presents meaningful opportunities. He mentioned digital e-governance, tourism services, reform. He mentioned that it's very highly ranked in ease of doing business rankings. And I wondered, Madam President, whether we had to go all the way to Georgia to figure out all of these things. Whether we had to expand our already existing DigiGov, whether that was necessary for us to do this, whether we couldn't via CTO or World Tourism Organization of the United Nations, of which we've been a member for several years, whether all those services and the benefits of being part of such a global organization wasn't possible, and reforms, the level of reforms and a policy basis and technical support we receive from a myriad of organizations. They include the World Bank, the IMF, CARTAC, the Financial Action Task Force, the OECD, ECLAC in the Latin America region, CARICOM. And I'm here wondering, why do we need to go to Georgia to get all these things? The point I'm trying to make, Madam President, was that the reasons presented by the leader of government business were very empty, in my view, as to why this has become so crucial. It almost felt as if, Madam President, I liken this to someone having to do an exam and the teacher tell you, write an essay of 1,000 words, but you don't necessarily have enough content, so you start making up a lot of words to get to the 1,000 words. This is how empty this feels, Madam President, the proposal put forward here today. And my colleague is absolutely right. Are we doing the necessary due diligence? Are we considering, have we done the proper geopolitical analysis to make sure that this move is a prudent move and that this move is steeped in pragmatism, not ideology? And so, Madam President, you sit here and you wonder why. Why? Why? Why all of this? The European Union, interestingly, Madam President, received an application from Georgia back in 2022. We are now in the year 2025. 13 years later, they have not approved the application for Georgia's European Union 2012. Sorry, 2012. You're listening. I was testing you. So you're listening. So, Madam President, we are now left to ask, why after 13 years haven't the European Union acceded Georgia into its fold, into its expansion? But here we are. Here we are reducing the visa requirement for diplomatic, official, ordinary service, and official passports holders. And it begs the question, why? Why? I noticed in this one he didn't mention that there were any St. Lucian students studying in Georgia. I noticed that. Maybe there are several St. Lucian businesses that are looking to invest in Georgia. He might add in the rebuttal. Or maybe we might start getting some tourists from Georgia. He might add. But he didn't outline with any specificity anything of note that we can stand there and say, bravo, this foreign policy decision is going in the right direction. So, Mr. President, Mr. Deputy President, the EU called on Georgia to repeal legislation undermining the rule of law because, Mr. President, it thought that there were several human rights infringement on legislation that Georgia would have passed in its parliament. Mr. Deputy President, I am a little skeptical because this is the same government that assured us that the Montenegrin investor named BMAX that was supposed to have come and build a housing project in Rock Hall, that investor was a bona fide investor and an investor that was worth its salt. A few months later, we found out via the international news media that BMAX from Montenegro had been, the principals had been arrested for fraud and for smuggling in Montenegro. The government then, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for CIP told us that that individual, that principal had given up his shares. And then later on, the Prime Minister told us that the BMAX contract has been cancelled. Up to now, we do not know why the contract with BMAX to build the housing project in Rock Hall has been cancelled. We've just been told, quite suddenly, at a press conference, when the reporter asked the Prime Minister, well, what's the latest with the BMAX development in Rock Hall? He said, haven't you heard? The contract is cancelled. And so I raise this as an example because I have to ask, how confident is this government that these changes that they are making here today are not in the bad interests of St. Lucia? Now let me address this sovereignty question. The issue was raised here.
Mr. Deputy President, I wish to, at this point, considering we're approaching 6 p.m., to ask for the suspension of Standing Order 9.3 to allow the Senate to sit between the hours of 6 and 7:30 in the evening.
Where's the question again? Yeah, I'm looking for the... No, I know. I was looking for the... Okay. So the question is that Standing Order 9.3 be suspended to allow the sitting to continue in the hours of 6, between the hours of 6 and 7:30 p.m. As many of that opinion say aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The standing order is suspended. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Now, Mr. Deputy President, let me, in anticipation of a sovereignty conversation and a debate on sovereignty, let me say this. The fact that we are here in our own parliament today means that we have the freedom. The fact that we can pass our own laws in our own parliament, there's nothing colonial about that. However, with freedom comes responsibility. With freedom comes responsibility. We on this side, we're into pragmatism. We are not into this old anti-colonial ideology to say, well, because our former colonial masters have colonized us, that somehow we can't be friends with them. Or that somehow everything that they stand for that we must be against. That is what I call absolute nonsense. That is nonsense. We are here today in a way to establish pragmatic relationships with anybody beyond our colonial friends. And of course, we have the right to select or make our own decisions by all means. But when we do so, we must also respect the sovereignty of other countries to respond however they see fit in their own sovereignty to respond. And we must never ever behave as if we can just do what we want without the regard for friends and without the regard for alliances that we have built up over time, without the regard for historic work that we have done with many countries that are way beyond our colonial masters, way beyond that. So there's nothing colonial about asking to be responsible and to be prudent in the use of your sovereignty. We have to be responsible with this freedom that comes with sovereignty. So nobody is on this side wanting to take St. Lucia back into colonialism. That's absolute nonsense. Nobody is professing that at all. What we're saying is, let there be pragmatism. You want to take us to Georgia? Okay, fine. You want to broaden and deepen relations? There is an immigration ramification when you open up the passports of ordinary people coming from anywhere in the world.
Sorry, Senator Ferdinand.
Mr. Deputy, I rise on a point of order. I'm trying to establish the relevance of what Senator Fede is saying to a discussion that went on in a previous bill. I am the only person, and also Senator Polius, who have spoken on this bill. Yet he has spent the last how many minutes responding and referring to a submission that was made in a previous bill. This Senator Goddard hasn't said anything about this bill, but he's just going on and on about things that he would probably think that Senator Goddard said in a previous debate, and I do not know how that can be relevant to this particular discussion.
Thank you, Senator Ferdinand. Please move on.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank the member for his intervention. Senator Polios did mention sovereignty in her presentation. I'm addressing the entire House. So I have not called any senator's name. I have not referred to anybody. But thank you, Mr. President. I'm moving on. So Mr. President, pragmatism. If we are going to expose our immigration apparatus to these are not just diplomats, you know. These are not just a select few individuals that as we have stated in the previous bill. Now we're saying ordinary citizens, and now we're saying official citizens. Now, official, ordinary, and service passports. Now we have had the visa requirement for individuals from Georgia for quite some time. Mr. President, through you, I put the question to the government side. What has changed in Georgia that has now caused us to remove an age-old policy that has existed in St. Lucia as it pertains to visa requirements for Georgian national? What has fundamentally changed? Because nothing that has been presented in the bill today suggests to me that we need to change tack. Why? Why remove?
Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Jawahir.
Mr. Deputy, I rise on a point of order because I'm not sure if the member and I are reading from the same document.
What's your point of order?
The member is misleading the House. This bill, this one is agreements between the government of St. Lucia and the government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary diplomatic, official, and service passports. It's not for ordinary citizens. It's for diplomatic persons who, under normal circumstances, will still get those exemptions anyway.
Well,
it's just upon entry.
The first one is ordinary passports, which I take to mean ordinary persons. So, Senator Fede, please continue.
It's okay, Mr. President. You know, it always happens. Just yesterday, I went to the the Vision Express and I got myself a new pair of glasses. But Mr. President, yeah, I'm seeing ordinary, service, official, and diplomatic passports. Yeah, I hope we're on the same page.
Yes.
So if it is that St. Lucia had a policy for many, many decades on individuals from a specific country, could be Georgia, it could be anywhere, and we are now, after decades, choosing to remove that policy, then the question is why? I have not seen anything that is substantial presented by the leader of government business as to why. But what we have seen internationally are things that are cautioning us. We have seen the EU refusing to have Georgia in the EU as an economic and trading bloc, which allows Georgia to free movement within the European Union. So Mr. President, the question is why? I don't believe that digital and e-governance and reforms in Georgia and their ease of doing business ranking is good enough. So the question is why? I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Ferdinand, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I listened to the two submissions made from the opposition. And normally I take notes and, I respond, but I do so, Mr. Deputy, when there is merit. All I see happening here is that these two members of the opposition have colluded to bring in arguments that are preconceived and try to hit on anything or anywhere the word passport can come in. So I don't know what it is about passports that excite them so much. I suspect, in fact, I was just about to stand on a point of order with regard to tedious repetition, because it looks like the presentation made by Senator Fede was a repetition of the presentation that had already been made, and quite eloquently, perhaps more so, by his colleague. And so, Mr. Deputy, he was not as eloquent as his previous colleague. So I don't know how he can applaud himself for that. So, Mr. Deputy, on that note, I submit this bill for its approval by this chamber.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of Georgia on visa exemption on holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports be read a second time. Yeah, and I'll put the question. As many of that opinion say aye, as many of our contrary opinions say no, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to give effect to and provide for the implementation of agreements between the government of St. Lucia and the government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 3.
Application.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 4.
Force of law.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Period of stay.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 6.
Condition of stay.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 7.
Suspension of agreements.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 8.
Amendment of schedules.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 9.
Regulations.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Aye. Schedule 1.
Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary passports.
Schedule 2.
Agreement between the...
Sorry. Schedule 1 stands part of the bill. Aye. Schedule 2.
Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on the visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic, official, and service passports.
Schedule 2 stands part of the bill. Aye. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Aye. Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemptions for holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports bill went through committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and the agreement between Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemption for holders of ordinary, diplomatic, official, and service passports bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of a contrary opinions say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the agreements between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Georgia on visa exemption for the holders of ordinary passports and the holders of diplomatic, official, and service passports, Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Federative of the Republic of Brazil on visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and short-stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports.
Agreements between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and the short-stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy, I beg for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49, let's verify, 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of our contrary opinions say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Federative of the Republic of Brazil on visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic, official or service passports and short-term, short-stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports. Mr. Deputy President, Brazil is or has the 9th largest economy in the world, and it is the largest economy in Latin America. Brazil is classified as an upper middle income development nation or developing nation with a mixed market economy. Mr. Deputy President, Brazil is a trade powerhouse with a diverse economic structure with agriculture, mining services, oil and gas, and manufacturing as some of its key industries. Diplomatic relations between the Federative Republic of Brazil and St. Lucia were established since 1979, it's the same year of independence. Technical cooperation of the Brazilian government with St. Lucia gained momentum with the signing of the technical cooperation agreements in the areas of security and agriculture during the first Brazil-Caribbean Community or Brazil-CARICOM Summit held in April of 2010. In November of 2010, Mr. Deputy President, the Brazilian government contributed resources and personnel to support projects mainly in the framework of actions to minimize the effects of Hurricane Tomas in St. Lucia with the implementation of the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, what we know as SEDIMA, through the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO. Mr. Deputy President, there is ongoing cooperation between St. Lucia and Brazil, and I just wish to point out a few of them. In the area of training for government officials, over the years, Mr. Deputy, St. Lucian officials and technical officers have participated in and benefited from several meetings and training in Brazil in the areas of agriculture, specifically water resource and soil management, the environment, technology, security, among others. Mr. Deputy President, there's also been cooperation in the area of health. And in the area of health, Mr. Deputy, St. Lucia has also been a recipient of medical supplies from the government of Brazil, including 10,000 oral doses of the polio vaccine, medication with an estimate of the value of $42,083 for treatment of rare diseases such as epilepsy and blood disorders. Mr. Deputy President, we've also been cooperating with Brazil in the area of education. And Brazil offers excellent opportunities for higher learning through the exchange program for undergraduate studies and undergraduate students, not studies, students. The invitation for the educational program has once again been extended to St. Lucia for the 2026 edition of the scholarship program. So, Mr. Deputy President, again, we believe that these are reasons that we as a nation, again, looking to South America and our other non-traditional friends to establish and deepen cooperation. So for that reason, Mr. Deputy, I present this to this chamber for its approval.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official or service passports and the short stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports bill be read a second time. Senator Fede.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just a very brief intervention. I know that senators are watching the clock, but Mr. President, just to rise and to support this one, Brazil, Mr. President, has actually been a diplomatic partner, as stated by the government, since 1979. My reason for supporting this one is because Brazil, one of the BRIC economies, along with Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Brazil, I'm talking about Brazil. So along with those that I've listed, Mr. President, is a significant economic powerhouse in the world and is located on the South American continent, Mr. President, in very close proximity to us. Mr. President, Brazil has been seen as a very good potential tourism market for quite some time. And for some reason or another, the Caribbean, we have not been able to leverage the full potential that Brazil has to offer the Caribbean as an opportunity to diversify markets and to also end seasonality. Mr. President, tourism officials around the Caribbean have actually salivated over the huge prospects of doing business with Brazil from a tourism standpoint and to help to buttress greater economic growth and wealth and prosperity in the various countries. Mr. President, it was very, very, very welcoming and to the opposition to have noted the ease with which the leader of government business presented this bill in comparison to others that have gone by. And we don't have to ask the questions as to where are the areas of cooperation, because we see that there's training in government officials. We're aware of that. Healthcare, the education cooperation is well established in the scholarship program, which has been going on for quite some time, even while we were in government. So Mr. President, of course the opposition will support a motion like this, and this is a good example of where our sovereignty can be used in a measured way. This is an example of where pragmatism and realism has actually been attributed to foreign policy of our country. So, Mr. President, there are several reasons why the opposition should submit its support, and we certainly do, because we see in this instance the vast potential for the expansion of a mutually beneficial relationship between Brazil and indeed the government of St. Lucia. Mr. President, the visa regime on short stays, I would have much preferred to see an ETA where potential tourists coming from Brazil and ordinary citizens coming could have applied for the visa online, and there could have been some form of a vetting process online. But I do understand that if going forward that Brazil is going to be leveraged as a tourism destination, then every barrier and restriction there is to travel should be reduced as much as possible to make St. Lucia more accessible to Brazilians. There's going to take some work, Mr. President, to establish flight routes to Brazil. I know that some countries have Brazilian airlines that are connecting via Panama as a hub, but I would want to encourage the government of St. Lucia to be progressive and to be proactive and to make sure that they leave no stone unturned to take this relationship to another level by establishing air connectivity routes between St. Lucia and Brazil as a game changer for economic growth and prosperity. Thank you.
Operator of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, it's very interesting the convenience with which the opposition finds reason to disagree and agree. A few minutes ago, we were looking at the previous bill where we, with regard to Georgia, and the leader of opposition business went to town and back on a whole thing with Russia, if not Georgia, Serbia, earlier on. That Serbia and Russia seem to be so close, and we must be mindful, giving us almost a long foreign policy lecture on how we should go about doing this, and pretending to be so cautious and caring so much about our reputation, the word reputation he used earlier. And here we are with, a similar matter. We're dealing with another country, Brazil, but of course, he has no issues with Brazil. And he refers to the BRICS. I would like to ask the leader of opposition business, what does the R in BRICS refer to? Which country is denoted by the acronym or the R in the acronym BRICS? Isn't it Russia? And therefore, I have a lot of difficulty. While I think, of course, it is good that we support this bill, but if your basis was all about Serbia, Russia, and the risks and so on, so what is the argument? Because the BRICS, we know which countries form part of that. And, you know, is it now convenient to ignore the R in BRICS? Mr. Deputy President, again, I want to reiterate that we...
Senator Pede?
Yeah. Rising a point of order, Mr. President. The member is misleading the House when he suggested trying in any way possible to avoid the R in BRICS. Everyone knows it's Russia. But the BRICS, the acronym, I mentioned Brazil being part of the BRICS, which have been seen globally as emerging markets. Nobody can take that away. But there are issues with Russia geopolitically. I am not arguing that Russia does not have significant economic value. That's a different argument. But it's a geopolitical argument that we've attached to Russia, and that's its stance on the Ukraine war and the illegal violation of another country's sovereign territory is what the opposition takes issue with. St. Lucia, by the way, has stood in solidarity with Ukraine when we suspended Russian applications. Don't forget, and that was the St. Lucia Labour Party government back in 2022.
Honourable Leader of Government, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. Mr. Deputy President, the concept of BRICS emerged out of a geopolitical context. And I'm just saying again, it's amazing how the opposition can become so, intertwined in their own arguments, as if Russia in BRICS is not Russia in the same Russia that's at the war with Ukraine. It's the same country, it's the same Russia. You can't erase it, it's the same country. The R stands for Russia, whether you want to associate it, it's the same country. So don't tell me that I have a problem with your friend Godard when we go to have a drink, but I don't have a problem with your friend Godard when he has to help me and my child do her homework. That kind of, this is like, what is he likes to use the term duplicitous. I don't get it. Anyway, Mr. Deputy, I was just saying that we stand on one principle, that we as a sovereign state are quite meticulous when we decide who our friends will be and who we form diplomatic relations with and why. And the opposition sees every opportunity, to jump on anything that will make a connection between St. Lucia's foreign policy and passports and CIP. That's it. So there's no CIP argument for Brazil, so it's okay. So, Mr. Deputy President, once again, I want to reiterate the importance for the number of benefits that I have explained, why we should strengthen our diplomatic relations with Brazil. So I put this to the Senate for its approval. I thank you.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and short-stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to give effect to and provide for the implementation of the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports, and the agreement on short-stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports of citizens of the Federative Republic of Brazil and St. Lucia.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 3.
Application.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill. Clause 4.
Force of law.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill. Clause 5.
Period of stay.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill. Clause 6.
Condition of stay.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill. Clause 7.
Suspension of agreements.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill. Clause 8.
Amendment of schedules.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill. Clause 9.
Regulations.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill. Schedule 1.
Agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passport.
Schedule 1, stands part of the bill. Schedule 2.
Agreement on short stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports of citizens of the Federative Republic of Brazil and St. Lucia. Note by the government of St. Lucia addressed to the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on the bilateral short stay visa waiver for the holders of ordinary passports.
Schedule 2 stands part of the bill. Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill. Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. As many are of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and the short stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports bill went through committee stage without amendment. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and the short stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the agreements between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Federative Republic of Brazil on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic, official, or service passports and the short stay visa waiver for holders of ordinary passports Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of Republic of India on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports.
Agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic or official passports.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to enable this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended in order to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed, Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled The Agreement between Government of St. Lucia and Government of the Republic of India on visa exemptions for holders of diplomatic and official passports. Madam President, this bill is being presented against the backdrop that India ranks fifth in the global scale of the largest economies in the world, and India has made significant advancements in the manufacturing of generic drugs with the expansion of its pharmaceutical industry. India, this country, is currently the third largest producer of generic medicines by volume, accounting for 20% of the total global pharmaceutical exports. Madam President, additionally, India supplies more than 50% of the vaccines manufactured globally. And so it tells you that they have a serious prowess in the area of health and pharmaceuticals. According to the World Bank, Madam Deputy, India remains one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and it is anticipated that they will attain a high to middle income status by the year 2047. Madam President, India's economy grew at a rate of 8.2% during the period 2023-2024, and the narrowing of the current account deficit and strong foreign portfolio investment, foreign exchange reserves touched an all-time high of 670.1 billion in early August 2024. Madam President, St. Lucia and the Republic of India established diplomatic relations back in 1982 during St. Lucia's, in fact, it was actually in our first few years after independence, so we were just a very young nation. The two countries have since enjoyed cordial relations and expanded on cooperation in diverse areas, including health, including education and energy. In the area of education, Madam Deputy, Madam President, sorry, Deputy, and confused me there. Madam President, since 1991, St. Lucia has benefited from training and scholarship programs offered by the Government of India, including the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, the ITEC program. Both the private and public sectors have been benefiting from these programs, and in such areas as financial management, international trade, small business, industry management, health, agro-processing, human resource planning, religious studies, and information technology. Madam President, in the area of community development projects, St. Lucia and India are in the process of facilitating discussions to make this successful and to facilitate the implementation of a short gestation projects that will directly benefit local communities. Madam President, it is anticipated that the results of these projects will be immediate and will continue to improve the economic situation, our social and economic development. So, Madam President, these are some of the reasons that provide us with some merit on which we believe St. Lucia should make those provisions that are being requested or outlined in the bill. And so I place this before the Senate for its approval.
Senators, the question is that agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and Government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports bill be read a second time. I shall pose the question. Senators, Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I just want to make reference to a short observation in the one of the previous bills that may not have been mentioned, but lest it be interpreted that it's for an unlimited period of time. The waiver for the ordinary visa is for a period of 90 days. But that may have been omitted. That's for Georgia. That's just that it's not going to be interpreted otherwise. But with regard to the present bill before us, I think very similar to Brazil, India presents tremendous opportunities for us. And also, I think we will agree that in the current environment, after the experience of COVID, any country that is showing serious advancement in the area of medical and pharmaceutical development or pharmaceutical opportunities, we should be able to seize these opportunities. Just recently, a health cooperation partnership was launched here by a private group that included St. Lucians, and it was launched through at the Ministry of Health, giving almost a sort of a health tourism opportunity, offering St. Lucians options with high-quality health care at a very reasonable price through that private business to India. And I think St. Lucians should benefit from that, and I think such opportunities can be explored further with deepening cooperation. So I know that these opportunities we should take and continue to deepen our relations with very good friends and partners like India. So I put this to the Senate, and I thank them for their contributions today.
Senators, the question is that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports bill will be read a second time. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to give effect to and provide for the implementation of the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic or official passports and for related matters.
Clause 2.
Interpretation.
Clause 2 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 3.
Application.
Clause 3 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 4.
Force of law.
Clause 4 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 5.
Period of stay.
Clause 5 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 6.
Condition of stay.
Clause 6 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 7.
Visas for assignments.
Clause 7 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 8.
Suspension of agreements.
Clause 8 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 9.
Amendment of schedule.
Clause 9 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 10.
Regulations.
Clause 10 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Schedule.
Agreement between the government of the Republic of India and the government of St. Lucia on exemption from visa requirements for holders of diplomatic and official passports.
The schedule stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Clause 1.
Short title.
Clause 1 stands part of the bill.
Aye.
Senators, the question is that the committee rises and the bill be reported. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Senators, I beg to report that the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports bill went through the committee stage without amendments. Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the report of the committee be adopted and that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the report of the committee be adopted and that the agreement between Government of St. Lucia and Government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for holders of diplomatic or official passports bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable, beg your pardon, Madam Clerk.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the agreement between the Government of St. Lucia and the Government of the Republic of India on visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic or official passports, Act 2025.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate do stand adjourned sine die.
Senators, the question is that the House, the Senate, do stand adjourned sine die. Before I put the question, I wish to say a special thank you to all of you senators. Special thanks to the clerks, Deputy President, media personnel, and office sergeant and the officers. Thank you all. It has been a long day. I thank you all for your discourse, your engagement, and of course, I wish everybody a wonderful evening. I now pose the question. I shall read it again. Senators, the question is that the House, Senate, do stand adjourned sine die. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All right.
So there we have it, viewers. We've come to the end of today's sitting of the Senate. And when we resumed at 4:30 this afternoon, the debate on the bills continued, and there was the passage of several bills relating to the diplomatic relations between St. Lucia and the Republic of Serbia, between St. Lucia and the government and the Republic of Indonesia, between the government of St. Lucia and Georgia. There was the passage of the bill between the government of St. Lucia and the Federative of the Republic of Brazil, and the agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the government of the Republic of India. Most of those bills related to the exemption for the holders, the exemption of visa exemption for the holders of diplomatic or official passports. So this was the substantive discussion once we had resumed at 4:30 this afternoon. Michael.
Merci Virgil. Comme nous venons au bout de session Sénat là aujourd'hui, comme Virgil dit, après-midi, c'est plutôt discussion yo tenu à sous établissement relation Saint-Lucie et puis gouvernement, ça c'est gouvernement Saint-Lucie et puis pays comme Serbia avec pays comme l'Inde, ça c'est India et puis Indonesia et puis Brésil avec oui, c'est avec Georgia. C'est ça seulement c'est pour bail mon restriction visa avec bail comme ça pour passeport avec vous savez situation comme ça qui gouvernement a plutôt discuté avec c'était une discussion particulièrement par entre même chef façade opposition et puis façade gouvernement. Mais nous nous avons parlé, nous avons sénateur Godard qui a continué la discussion et puis puisque la dernière, c'est pas un halé cassé, mais il était un petit moment qui était très intéressant. Eh bien, je n'ai passé bien avec nous pas de cas esprit qui a allé autant long, mais quand même nous bien contents qu'il nous a mené là-haut avec nous avons dit bonsoir, merci un peu pour rester puis nous une bonne soirée et puis nous avons mené dévié pour station NTN continuer à garder nous et pour apprendre plus à ce qui a passé en pays Saint-Lucie et puis gouvernement Saint-Lucie.